How's it going? Adam Drake here, and today I want to talk about our engine break-in service and kind of the steps you should do once you receive an engine from us where we've done our EBIS break-in service. So we do include a little yellow slip with all the 83 engines and pink slips with all the RD2 engines, and also if you send in an engine to us, we give you the yellow slip with the final break-in instructions. But I know a lot of times people don't want to read instructions, and it's just sometimes easier to watch a video. So again, the instructions are included. When we do the break-in service, we also set the carburetor if it's any OS-based engine. If it's something like a Pico, Reds, Nova, we don't usually set the carburetors just because sometimes those manufacturers may make changes, and because we don't run those engines, I don't want to set the carburetor not knowing that maybe a needle or something has changed in production. So with anything OS based, so if it's Flashpoint, Ultimate, Ninja, or any of the actual OS branded engines, we do set the carburetors to make it a little bit easier. And with our break-in slip, we basically do a rundown of your first 4 tanks and how you should heat cycle the engine and kind of finish the break-in process. Well, to kind of simplify that in a quick video, again, it's super important. Make sure you preheat the engine, make sure the tank is full. I like to use a head heater. You can use a heat gun, just be careful when using a heat gun. Sometimes a heat gun gets the engine hotter than what it needs to be, and it gets it there really fast, that it will then oversaturate the carburetor with heat also, which can make it a little bit difficult to get started. So if you use a head heater, it brings it up to temp slow. A lot of times it won't transfer as much heat to the carburetor. But if you want to use even a combination of both, that's fine. Just try to keep that heat away from the carburetor so it's still able to draw fuel good. From there, once the engine is up to 180 to 200 degrees, I'll start it. Make sure you have tires on. You don't want to start a brand new engine with no tires where you have no load and it's able to kind of easily rev the engine. The little bit of load from the tires helps allow you to get a proper tune, and also is actually easier on the connecting rod. So I will then start the engine. I'll just have it on the starter box. Sometimes when it's on the starter box, if I need to, I'll make small adjustments. Mainly at this point, it would be to the low end and the idle. So low speed needle or the idle. Make sure that the engine kind of has a nice steady idle. You can even tilt it slightly on the starter box to allow the exhaust and any excess fuel to run out of the pipe, because it's still going to be a bit rich. From there, I'll let the engine idle for maybe a minute or two to make sure it's kind of naturally fully heat saturated. And then every minute or two, I'll just kind of do some really slow pulls with the carburetor, or with my radio on, opening the carburetor, kind of running through the range of the throttle. Again, as long as the settings are still rich, you can run all the way through the range of the trigger, just making sure basically once you hit full throttle, roll back off the throttle. You don't want to over rev the engine for a couple reasons. For one, in case the settings are a little bit lean, and also because the engine is still tight. The reason why I'm kind of doing the slow pull through the throttle is because any excess oil and fuel that is in the engine and in the pipe, I'm just trying to kind of run and blow out the exhaust pipe. So I'll do that, let the engine idle for like 3/4 of a tank. You don't want to let the engine idle so long that it runs out of gas. That's why I say 3/4 of the tank, just to be safe. Make sure you don't run it dry. And throughout that time of that 3/4 of a tank, again, every maybe minute to 2 minutes, just do a couple slow pulls. If needed, you can make some small adjustments, again, to the idle and the low speed needle. But also you'll want to monitor the temperature. Make sure, again, you're keeping it around 200 degrees. If it's getting a little bit hotter than 200 degrees, that's fine. You just don't want to go below that 180 to 200 range. If it's getting really hot, you can always pull the head heater off, but in most cases, I just leave the head heater on. Again, the engine's idling, it's getting plenty of fuel, but you want to make sure that you're not idling it and running it too cold, because it'll put additional stress on the rod. So at the end of that 3/4 of a tank, I will do one final, clean the engine out, kill the engine, make sure it's at bottom dead center, and then let the engine sit for 10 or 15 minutes so it fully cools off. Remove the head heater, just let it sit and cool. I'll then refuel the tank, and then I will reheat the engine. So I'll do the same as what I did for tank 1 twice. So the second tank, completely repeat that process. Preheat it to 180 to 200, fire it up, run 3/4 of a tank every minute to 2 minutes, do the slow pulls to clean out any excess fuel. So I like to do that twice at home before heading to the track. That way, kind of the worst part of the process is done. You can do this obviously at the track, but I like to do it at home so that when I get to the track, my third tank and third heat cycle, I will kind of do the same process in terms of preheat the engine, start it up. Now I will start making a few more adjustments to the carburetor. I will bench tune it or tune it on the box a little bit if needed, and start running it on the track. Now, when I start running it on the track, bottom to mid can be really crisp and clean. The high-speed needle still needs to be conservative, needs to be on the rich side. So I would say maybe 80%, still to where it's enjoyable to drive on the track, but not like screaming on the straightaway. So again, you're probably going to be maybe 3 hours rich on top, 3 to 4 hours rich on top, but you're still able to kind of do all the jumps, everything cleans out good until you get to the straightaway, and then it's still going to be a little bit rich. From there, you can run multiple tanks. A lot of times I'll run on my third cycle, I'll run 2 or 3 tanks where maybe after 1 or 2 tanks, I'll lean out the top a little bit to where now I'm at 85%. And then after those 2 to 3 tanks, I'll shut it off, repeat that process from heat cycle 3, preheat the engine, run it on the track. Now you're at 85%. After a tank or 2, lean out the top a little bit to where now I'm maybe at 90%. And then from there, you can pretty much run as many tanks as you want. I still like to run basically 1 fuel bottle, not really much more than that. So my first day of running, I'll kind of run 1 fuel bottle at a time after heat cycle number 3. And then just slowly adjust the tune closer to the race tune. Now, if you have to, with our break-in system, if you got in a jam and you absolutely had to preheat the engine, fire it up and go race, we're asked sometimes, can you do that? Of course you can do that, but for the kind of the life, the longevity, and the overall performance of the engine, we recommend doing at least the 4 heat cycles before you hit the track. Even with that, after a half to even a full gallon of fuel if you're taking your time and running it a bit conservative on top. I would say until you get to that kind of half to 1 gallon mark is when the engine is fully race ready. You've taken your time, it's been safe, and the engine will still continue to improve even after that, because these engines nowadays last a really long time, and a lot of it though comes down to your initial tanks, how you treat the engine, and especially when you hit the track. Also, with having the high-speed needle a little bit conservative for those first 4 heat cycles, it's kind of a safety to where if you hit another car going off the face of a jump, or if a jump has a hole in the face of it and the car gets kicked, your natural instinct as a racer is to hold the throttle on to try to correct that. And if the engine's a little bit rich, yeah, maybe you can't completely get the front end up and save that mistake, but it will help save the engine, because if the engine is tuned to 100%, you hit a hole when it's still new, sometimes you can score the piston if you don't have it a little bit conservative. So just wanted to share kind of my process when I'm breaking in a new engine for myself after using our EBIS system, and hopefully you enjoy this and it makes your nitro experience fun and more enjoyable.